everybody. Welcome back to Would You Stay Tuned? For our very first, I think, we did stay tuned.
Yeah, or something, whatever that's called.
Yeah, this is a WDST.
Yeah.
And in this case, we actually have Marvin and myself, Dan, back again to discuss something that we've already covered on this show before, and that is the Netflix animated series original, Pluto. Which was the, oh gosh, I'm blanking out on the director or the creator of Pluto.
Oh, well, I always remember Osamu Tezuka.
Yeah, Tezuka is Astro Boy's creator, which Pluto is based on, but Pluto itself is an kind of a reimagining of a Astro Boy story by Urasawa. I just couldn't remember his...
Naoki Urasawa.
Naoki, that's right.
Yeah.
Also the guy who did Monster, just as a recap.
I do like that the manga's actual title is Pluto Urasawa X Tezuka.
Yes. They were much more upfront and clear about like Urasawa is doing Tezuka.
Yeah, it's like saying like David Fincher X Steven Spielberg or something.
Now remember, in Japan, X's are crosses.
Right, they're cross. Also, sometimes you're not supposed to say them, which I've learned.
Yes. So in the case of Spy Family,
which very much bothers me.
Yes. Or in the case of Hunter.
I know it's Hunter. What? Don't put the X, you bitch.
It's essentially a slash sometimes.
Don't put the slashes either, because I want to say .hack/sign. I don't want to say .hack/sign.
Well, if there's a slash in the middle of it, I don't want to.
You put the
pronounce
slash in there. You put the slash.
I mean, I won't say fate/stay night or whatever the fuck.
Well, all those video game fighting game titles are
under night in birth
Uniest. Unicular.
Dang it. I don't know any of the actual subtitles, so I can't make fun of it sufficiently.
The professionals don't. The people who play professionally don't.
They only know the abbreviations.
Exactly.
We assume.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to Pluto.
Pluto.
We're here to discuss Pluto again because now we've all seen it, or both of us have seen it.
Yes.
Actually, just as a reminder, I was actually someone who had already seen all of it during our first recording, and so actually, to be honest with everyone listening, I really wanted to discuss the whole show in full.
I could tell
at the time, just because of how kind of scattered and kind of uneven it could feel, and it's something that's really, you want to discuss the whole dang thing after you've seen it all.
I think part of it also is, we'll just also remind everyone, Sarah and Marvin, I'm Marvin, and Sarah's not here, she didn't watch the whole thing. At the time, had only seen one episode, the first episode, which was essentially 2 episodes. It was the introduction.
Because these are hour-long affairs, each one of these episodes. There are 8 of them. Yeah,
and part of it, I can understand your reasoning, because it's structured in a way so that it's hard to tell or even remember when an episode ended and the next began, because episodes don't really have oh my God, this is definitely the ending versus the next episode.
True.
That happens constantly within the episodes themselves. So you're kind of just watching one really long movie, essentially, one 8-hour movie.
And it dwells on certain things for a while, but it's not like each individual episode seems to have a beginning that culminates in an ending or anything like that.
Right. It's
just a procession of chapters.
Yes. And I guess we can get right into it.
Yes, we can. We all know what's up.
I guess
you've seen it, haven't you, listener?
Well, let me just quickly recap the whole thing to the best of my recollection, and tell me if I get things wrong.
I'm further out from watching it than you are, so I'll try, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, okay. So there is something killing or targeting the world's 7 greatest robots, which are the robots that are most likely usable as a weapon of mass destruction.
Oh, isn't it funny how the original Mega Man had 6 robot masters? And a Mega Man?
But then, what's it called? Oh, and they're creators too. And then specifically because those creators were part of a peacekeeping fact-finding mission.
Right. Well, not just creators, but also like renowned scientists. Anyone who was part of this fact-finding mission, the Bora expedition.
Right, because one of them is Professor Osanomizu and
Ochanomizu.
Ochanomizu. I'm sorry, I just transposed that. Ochanomizu, and he didn't create Atom. He created Uran.
Right.
But he was still considered renowned enough. And actually, throughout the show, you learn that he even is renowned enough that even Tenma respects him. Even Tenma goes, "You're pretty good." I'm not gonna lie.
Ochanomizu is that like big bulbous-nosed scientist who is like the kindly stepfather to Astro Boy in the original story. So he's kind of like the kind second father to Astro Boy, while Dr. Tenma is the cruel first father who abandoned him and sold him to a circus.
Yes, which, okay, just a quick tangent. That is unbelievable in this universe. Like that's stupid. Like that couldn't happen in this universe. Right?
Well, okay, we're starting to already get into some of like the issues that one can have with this.
There's so many
story
issues
because but this gets at the core of it right away, which is the fact that we are trying to adapt and to some degree stay fairly true to a story that was
that's the fatal flaw of the show.
Exactly.
It tried to stay true to it when it should have just deviated like crazy.
Yes, because every time it starts to deviate and get into something like very like deep and complicated that feels very much like it wasn't part of the original like storytelling, I'm assuming, just because I didn't read the original arc or see the original show of Astro Boy that told the original version of this story.
Right.
But one can surmise that, of course, Urasawa's take is grittier, darker, more adult, let's say.
Or murder.
Right. And it's like, but that opens up the door for more complicated storytelling that, you know, it starts to build itself up. And by the end of the show, it's like, wait, hold on. This was Astro Boy originally. Okay, shit. Back to anti-war, anti-hate. Very broad message. Let's wrap this up. Let's go.
But why didn't he feel the ability or the freedom to just deviate? I don't understand that, because
it might have been he was just too gun shy about like messing with Tezuka, you know, the beloved story too much.
Well, Tezuka himself rewrote his own stories all the fucking time. Like, it didn't matter.
Know, like he's allowed. It's like when Ridley Scott does it, it's okay. No, it's not though.
So okay, because one of the best scenes in the entire the show is, okay, you get to the heart of why Tenma is so bitter. He's having dinner with, at the time, he's still calling Adam Tobio.
Right. And which is the name of his dead son.
Yeah, his
who
son,
he tried to replace with Adam.
Yes. So he's now trying to...
Who's also Astro Boy.
Yes. In America's Astro Boy.
Yeah, Japan's Astro Boy.
Yeah. So he's trying to have dinner to emulate this thing he used to do with his son. And he's like, how was your day? He's like, oh, I had a great time. You know, I studied, but then I found this like thing about butterflies or insects or whatever that I really enjoyed. And, you know, dinner's really good, Dad. It's really good. And he goes, this is all wrong. 1, my son hated studying. 2, my son would not have been interested in the type of book you found. 3, my son always hated my dinners. And 4, I think my son hated me. So what am I trying to do here? Right. And it's like...
And also, Homer doesn't say Bo, he says dough.
And it's like...
It's all wrong.
That's a really good scene, but then but then you remember 4 episodes ago, Astro Boy said, my dad sold me to a circus. So you're like, what the fuck? Like,
I mean, connecting those dots is kind of fun for me. That is goofy stuff that becomes fun in retrospect. But in terms of the overall story, by the end of the shows, the series plot, it feels like it feels like it's forced to abandon interesting concepts and topics in service of the original story.
But it also feels like it's not actually interested in story. It almost feels more like it's interested in having large metaphors. And the only character or story it was actually interested in was in G6 until he dies. And then the rest of his backstory is told by Adam. And you're like, okay, look, I think you and I both agree G6 is like the most interesting part. Like, Adam himself is not interesting, actually. Like,
not particularly, no. He's like the He's almost like the Batman of Gotham Central, where he's
shows
like the
up.
main character who originally is why everything is here. But when he shows up, he's kind of like a side character of sorts. Although they do kind of like they force him into the spotlight at the end. But
and also like the storytelling around it is very, very like transparent, in my opinion. Like it's pretty clear that when Adam dies, he's clearly going to come back to life. He's the only robot that didn't get fucking eviscerated by everyone. And Gesicht, he's probably going to die because they're leading up to a very specific moment. And you're like, okay, so he's going to die. And so the actual like beat to beat storytelling isn't like super fantastic, because it also then does a bunch of stuff where you're like, in an American or like Western style of storytelling would be considered really sloppy. Like, for example, do you know what the teddy bear's name even is? The teddy bear that's controlling America? I looked it up, but did you know from watching the show?
I mean, I had a pretty good guess. Because it was a teddy, I thought like it has to have something to do with Roosevelt. This is America we're talking about.
Right. So it's Dr. Roosevelt, but they don't even mention that name in the show. So in the show, like I think halfway through the show, you start seeing flashes of the teddy bear AI, and you're like, okay, what the hell does that mean? And at the very end, very, very end, it's revealed that it's teddy bear Dr. Roosevelt has been behind this the whole time, but they don't say the name. But also Dr. Roosevelt was controlling all the strings, but also we get Brow to kill him out of nowhere somehow. Right. And you're like, who was that? How did Brow get there? How did Adam convince him to do that? How was Brow able to kill in the first place? They never explain that. And it turns out all of this is explained in the manga, but it isn't put in the show. So,
okay. I didn't look into it far enough to know this.
So there's apparently like a shot in the manga that it doesn't even explain that much more, but at least says, "Oh, we'll see you again tomorrow, Dr. Roosevelt," as the president's leaving. So you get to actually see the villain. Whereas in the show, you're like, what the hell just happened? I have no idea what that is. And Brow, they explain more about how, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, Dr. Roosevelt manipulated Brow into becoming a murderer, similar to Gesicht, by setting up a situation where a bunch of emotions happened. So there's actually more backstory to Brow. Because in this show, you're like, what was Brow? They don't explain. They kind of have him around, and it's weird. Like, I get it, he's the cool Hannibal Lecter, but out of that, like, there's no explanation. Like, Hannibal Lecter has a whole backstory in Silence of the Lambs. They explain who he is. They explain the people he hates. They explain his objectives. He's not just a side character to Clarice. Like, he has his own motivations. So you would expect Brow would have some motivations too, but in the show, they don't explain it. And it's kind of inexplicable why they don't, considering the fact there's so much else that's animated and shown. Show some backstory. I don't need to watch Brando eating a whole dinner with his family for that long. It's fine. Show more backstory.
Yeah, I think we kind of got Detroit like too human here, because we want to know only about the goddamn detective, and the rest of the whole show is like, get out of the way. I want to know about Kesset.
But the thing is, those are actually all interesting points, but they're made uninteresting by how long they last. Like, they just last so long. We get it. Brando, you're not fighting just for yourself. You're fighting for your family. Hercules, we get it. You have PTSD. It's why you're fighting. We don't need 2 episodes to show that off. Epsilon, I get it. You're a pacifist. You tried to save children. We only needed like an episode. You don't need like an episode and a half to get your point across. Like, it's just, let's tighten up the storytelling a bit, especially since you discarded other storytelling mechanisms for these moments. Mm-hmm. Why? It's kind of weird. Like, I don't get it. Like,
yeah. I mean, like, I'll be honest with you, like, the pacing didn't irk me as much as it does you. Which is weird to me, because I'm the guy who puts every YouTube video he watches into 1.5 or higher. I think part of it is that, so the difference, I hate to make the comparison again, like I did with the last episode, but I'm going to compare it to Giant Robo again. A big part of what allows Giant Robo to have this similar type of pace is that almost every scene where it slows down and they like everyone talks and stuff and they're just hanging out, big
nuclear level backstory stuff is being dropped almost casually. Like they'll be eating dinner at a Chinese restaurant and be like, do you think he'll know about the fact that I had to kill my own dad? And you're like, okay, like big things start dropping, right?
Okay.
Or like, oh, okay, who is that? Oh, he knows exactly who he is. Oh, it's Bato the Impact, his old rival. And then like, it's like a whole thing. Like, and it's like, it slows down to like allow characters to drop bombs. But this show slows down to kind of like really focus on a point and kind of drive the point home. We're like, yeah, I'm fighting for my family. I really want to make sure that they're good. And it's like, I get it. Like it's a different type of, especially I think part of it is that the way they adapted it is they didn't adapt it by rewriting. They adapted by grabbing the stuff they wanted and discarding whole sections that they didn't. So
maybe that's what happened.
Because a lot of people are saying otherwise the anime is like a slavish recreation of the manga. Like it's almost panel for panel in lots of things. Okay. So if they did it that way, they would also likely match the pacing. It kind of reminds me of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which, I think rightfully so, most people claim is the better version of the anime. For people who don't know, the original Full Metal Alchemist anime.
There are 2 whole anime series that were produced at 2 different times.
Entirely one. Yeah,
that
2
adapted
separate.
Full Metal Alchemist, the manga, twice.
The difference is that the first version of the anime ran out of manga material. So they decided to
it was not yet done as a manga.
So instead of waiting, the studio was like, no, we just want to make our own story and move on. And the mangaka agreed. She was like, that's fine. Make your own story. But it was terrible. So then when they redid it again for Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, 2 things happened. One, a lot of the beginning is sped up like crazy because people are like, yep, people saw this. We don't need to reanimate the entire thing again. So a lot of it's sped up. But as a result, towards the end, a lot of it is matched exactly the same pacing as the manga, and thus it's really slow.
Yeah,
and not always in a good way. It's like it's fine to have slower conversation scenes, but they have slow action scenes. Where the thing I remember the most is basically okay. So I'm trying not to spoil it, but someone is fighting someone with an eye patch. So they're trying to like get into the guy's blind side, the eye patch side, right? And the guy goes, I see. You're trying to exploit the fact that I have an eye patch. And they're just talking as if they would in a manga because you can do that type of writing pacing in a manga because you can freeze on a panel and have them talk. But in the anime, you see the guy slowly run around him at a distance, and then the guy who's supposed to be like one of the fastest guys in the world goes, I see. You're trying to get in my blind spot, and you're like, this scene sucks because you slavishly followed the panels. And I feel like, to be
honest though, I don't know if there are any anime series who would have adapted it to the degree that you like.
Chainsaw Man. So even though I didn't like Chainsaw Man's action that much, they're willing to forego certain things just to make it faster.
Okay, so this is another example you're bringing up of manga versus anime.
Yeah, so there's a video by Super Eye Patch Wolf who didn't like the changes because he was like, look at how much of the dynamism is missing from the panel, right? Okay. But then my reaction to it is, and to be fair, I haven't like read the entire manga like book to book. I've just seen sections and I've read and I've compared, and I'm like, I don't think it's that big a deal because one, it would have really slowed it down. And 2, I think the action is not the point of Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man is honestly about kind of hanging out and eating dinner and talking about your ambitions for the future. And sometimes there's fights in between. And
I don't have to take your word for anything Chainsaw Man related.
and then I think even the show, like the showrunners, the anime runners know that because they've included scenes about like day-to-day activities and day-to-day living that aren't in the manga at all. There's like a whole series where a guy is just cooking breakfast, and that's important. It actually gives you a sense of how ordered and specific and by the book he is. Like he counts the amount of like coffee he puts in his filter and stuff, like very specifically and all that. It's a routine.
And that was
not in the manga. Yeah. And so imagine that, like they had to be like,
are the original writers or creators involved with the show?
I'm not 100% sure. I just know that it's definitely not in the original.
Okay.
Which
I mean, I ask these questions because I wonder, like, are these flourishes that you're enjoying, are they liberties being added by others, or
I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, it could be the original guy being like, I always wanted to put this scene, but I had a limited page count. Can you put it in? It could have been that. All of this is to say, for Pluto, I think it's like, there are certain things when you copy or adapt panel for panel, it can work. So like, I think Sin City is a good example. When you copied Sin City panel for panel, Sin City happened to have decent enough pacing that when you did that, it worked. Like it had a very American style of pacing for a comic book, so it worked.
Well, I feel like there's also something to be said for, like, you can adapt panel to panel, but the people producing the moving adaptation have all the control in the world over how long you see anything.
That's true. Yeah. Yes.
And so, like, you can go for slavish panel recreations, but you can speed it up some, more to a greater degree than anything you saw in Pluto, for instance.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be as slow as they showed it to us.
Yeah.
It could go a little faster.
And again, I don't mind slow. Like, there's a lot of anime that's really slow. And
yeah, it's so interesting to me that I wasn't like clawing my eyes out while watching it, because I'm used to being impatient these days. These days, I feel like I'm always impatient watching things because I can't ignore the everlasting buzz of, you haven't seen or played or read XYZ. It's ruined my ability to rewatch things a lot over time.
Right.
And like, just like, that's the backstory behind it's hard for me to sit still watching things that take their time a lot of the time. And for whatever reason, this show did not do that to me. And I'm so curious now as to why that might be the case, because it bothered you.
I think part of it is also that I think I'm annoyed that it did that by sacrificing better storytelling. So like, so the actual, I have general problems with Pluto as a story overall, not just in the anime adaptation. Like, the idea that Dr. Roosevelt, the teddy bear AI supercomputer hidden in America, in the United States of Thracia, was behind the whole thing is really stupid. Like, the idea that, like, somehow, like, before, the motivations made sense, like just to explain to the audience, like, so it turns out the true villain, Pluto, is not Pluto. The villain behind Pluto is Abula, his dad, essentially, because Pluto was originally a really nice robot named Sahad, right? So all Sahad wanted to do was turn the desert landscape into fields of flowers. He just wanted to figure out a way to make his homeland.
They wanted to terraform the desert.
Yeah, which is why he has weather powers as a robot, and why he had the ability to grow flowers and stuff like that. But as Pluto, the malevolent body he's been pushed into, it manifests as tornadoes, hence the tornado attacks and whatnot. But the guy really behind that is Abula, because Abula is actually not actually his dad. It turns out it's a robot that took his dad's hatred, manifested it as a version of himself, Abula, but is really a robot, and sort of has lied to himself the entire time. Because Abula's entire family, there's a whole complicated thing with Abula's whole family was killed, so we hired Dr. Tenma to covertly create a robot. But for some reason, Dr. Tenma thought the best way to make the most advanced robot in the world is to put exactly 9.9 billion entities into the brain of the robot. For some reason.
You just have to put every personality in the world because you have access to that.
Somehow.
And then, it's just so overwhelmed with everything that it could be that it won't wake up.
That sounds like you did a bad job, in my opinion.
But don't worry, we have a fix for that.
The fix is to make him really angry.
What we can do is make him focus on being really angry and hateful, and he'll wake up because he's focused on that.
This is really.
And this concept is introduced so late in the show that you start going like, oh right, this originally came from a long time ago. Fuck.
And also, it's like, why, right? Like, why? why the 9.9 billion minds? And also, like,
it's that
where did
same
you get
sort of bang whiz like pseudoscience that it says gamma radiation is responsible for anything and everything. It's that.
I think it's worse. I think because this is more of like it wants to ride the line between gritty realism and metaphor. And
right, and they're willing to just use robots for that metaphor in a very messy way that is, at this point, fairly unsatisfying because we are too inundated with real technology and we understand how it works. Yeah, and the show itself shows it working in the way we understand it to some degree. Yeah, and then every so often it'll just say, actually, also magic.
Yeah, so it just doesn't ride the line well enough. I think
it's pretty inconsistent.
I think you had to either just fully accept and embrace the fact that this is a gritty, realistic take on what if robots from Astro Boy, aka Captain Atom, existed in a gritty world, or you have to go kind of fantastical and metaphorical.
Did you call Astro Boy Captain Atom?
Isn't that his name, Captain Atom, in the anime, in the original? I thought it was Captain Atom.
Was it?
I thought it was.
Why is it called Astro Boy if his name's Captain Atom?
I don't remember. I could be fucking making that up.
Well, it's just because like when I hear Captain Atom, I think of the DC character very quickly. So it's like I don't know who else to think of.
Is Astro Boy known as Captain Atom? Oh yeah. Yeah, so it originally appeared as a supporting character in the comic Atom Taishi, Ambassador Atom, sometimes referred to as Captain Atom. So yeah, that is
that like within the West though?
Only in Japan. I think I picked it up by just reading I was reading a lot of Wikipedia articles because I wanted to figure out what this fucking teddy bear thing was.
Okay, fair enough.
But then either go fully gritty, realistic. Or go,
which is what I wanted.
Or go fantasy, which is but like all encompassing epic fantasy, which is what Giant Robo did. Because Giant Robo, everything's a metaphor. Every character is a metaphor or means something. But they're also one fully fleshed out characters because they're allowed to be more than just metaphor. Because the problem with this show is that if you allow a lot of the characters to grow beyond the metaphor, they clash into the realism of the world and they stop making sense. Because you're like, okay, so these are like gladiatorial robots, right? Why do they have to be in the robot and put themselves at risk? Why do they have to shove their heads into robots when we've seen remote control happen multiple times?
It's because the realism of this show is a thin veneer that was applied to the original story. Unfortunately.
And I think it's also one of those things that I can't confirm this for sure, but there's a lot of manga that was written just as it came out, right? Dragon Ball Z is famous for this. He just started writing it. After a certain point, he stopped caring about arcs. And he just started writing whatever came to mind. This is how the Cell Saga came about in Dragon Ball Z. He was just kind of
are you surmising that Pluto was written in that way, just like as they went?
I think he knew where it should end, right? But I don't think he knew how to get there. And he was just writing it to get there. Because, for example, I think one tell is the horns. Every murder has horns.
The horns really fizzle out.
They never really explain why he cared so much about horns, other than his suit is horns, but that's just a design detail. It didn't have any significance metaphorically or thematically or emotionally as a character.
And there are a lot of little tidbits that are brought up kind of as loose ends that don't seem to actually amount to much. Why is little traumatized Wassily so why does he know a weird song that foretells everything?
Yeah, or why is Epsilon show up so late when Epsilon is one of them, basically second in power to Atom? And he could have helped a lot.
But he's a pacifist, man.
But he could have helped a lot pacifistly.
No.
It's one of those things where he probably just didn't have the character design. You know what? That's the funny part. Again, going back to Giant Robo. Okay, so they talk about these. I forget what it's called. It's the Magnificent Seven. I forget what are the bad guys in Giant Robo. Bad bad
The
guy
Hateful Eight?
organization in
The
giant
Sinister
robots.
Six?
It's called Big Fire, but within Big Fire, they have like this group of, I think, like 7.
The World 3?
It's like the Celestial, the Magnificent 10. Okay, that's why I said Magnificent. So there's a Magnificent 10 who are the top 10 bad guys in Big Fire, right? Which is the bad guy organization.
The Gung Ho Guns.
Yeah, so they had those figured out. And then they always talk about, but wait till the Celestial 9 come, right? Because the Celestial 9 are the good guy team, right?
Oh, okay. So an additional 9 characters that are good.
Yes. So
it isn't like you knock off number 10 and suddenly they turn into the Celestial 9 instead.
No. And it's like, I forget what, what is it called? Like the giant robo organization, like the data from the anime itself is really fun because, so they're called the Experts of Justice, right? That's why I love the show.
okay. that is worth it.
Yeah. So they're called the Experts of Justice. And part of that team is the Celestial 9, the Celestial 9 being the 9 most powerful experts of justice in the world, right?
Sure.
In the show, you only end up seeing like 4. And there's a throwaway line in the show where they go, "Oh, if only the Celestial 9 weren't away," etc. Right? Okay. While the huge disaster, the worldwide disaster is happening. So where the fuck could they be? Right?
Yeah.
Like literally happening all over the world. So they got to be somewhere in the world. Where else could they be? But they have a throwaway line of, "Oh, if only they were here." And the creator admitted that we just didn't have enough time. Like this OVA, the 7-part OVA took over 10 years to make. We just got to get this show out. So,
sure.
And I feel like that's probably similar here, where it's like, I just don't feel like bringing in Epsilon yet. So we're going to have Brando and Hercules for a bit, have them do stuff.
Okay.
You know, and it's clear,
I get what you mean.
And it's clear that the character he found the most interesting, and which is why he started with him, is Gesicht. Because he wanted to really flesh him out, give him a whole backstory, really juked us out with the whole 500 Zeus per body line. And you're like, oh, what could that mean? Was he like an evil guy? And it turns out the evil thing he did was in the war. But in real life, that line was about, oh, he got a daughter. Oh, that's cute. You know, and then
he had a little robo child.
Yeah.
Which, again, when you think it through, the fact that there are robo children is really weird.
Yes, because it's like we will just perpetually be family forever and ever and ever, and just in the same way forever. And like because they show Astro, or I keep saying Astro, Adam and Uran going to school, and I'm like, Adam is like Adam's like a super genius. He could teach you shit. Why are you like Uran? Maybe like she seems to be like actually a young kid.
Well, yeah, that actually brings up something that is kind of interesting about the show is that they seem to put a lot of stock into like mimicry of humanity is enough. Well, like kind of like mimicry of humanity is close enough to humanity that. Like like Dr. Tenma like drives the point home with Helen when he's like you like just try crying, just try faking crying for me. Eventually you might feel it for real, maybe, but like I did. I don't know if I'm feeling it for real myself.
I mean, and I think that's every Tenma scene is really fascinating because he's
and that's really like that's kind of cool
because he's like a piece of shit. But he's also really important. Okay, by the way, I also watched the entire rest of the show with the English dub.
Yeah, and I didn't do that.
So Tenma is voiced by Keith David.
Oh shit!
So it makes it
that lends some. That makes the character a little different.
It makes it kind of weird because one, Keith David does a ton of gravitas. So as soon as Tenma talks in the episode, you're like, oh, everyone shuts up and listens. Like
suddenly Goliath is talking about abandoning his boy and selling him to a circus.
Yeah. So it makes his character immediately sound really, really important. But at the same time, you're also like, but it's Keith David. It's hard to ignore the fact it's Keith David. And it's like kind of hard to get past it. I can't see Dr. Tenma.
Sure.
For some reason
that happens with me and Kevin Michael Richardson.
Yeah, sometimes it works. Like it worked for me for Goliath in Gargoyles. It's funny because you brought that up, but like it doesn't work here for some
Well,
reason.
Goliath would have been one of the first times that our ears heard him.
Right. That's probably why.
It's very hard to like find him out of place that early on. But
sometimes I hear him in other things and I go, oh, that's Keith David. But I think it's just because I don't expect that deep and booming and commanding a voice out of a character that kind of looks kind of like thin and frail. Like he doesn't look like like physically imposing. He's mentally imposing. He's like intellectually imposing.
Yeah, and I can tell you that I'm pretty sure that the Japanese voice for Dr. Tenma did not sound much like Keith David's like register or timbre.
Yeah,
like, it was not a super low guy.
Yeah, you immediately went, holy shit, that's Keith David. What the hell?
yeah. So like that's an interesting choice, honestly.
But it's a brave choice, I think, because it makes the character stand out instantly. Like as really different from everyone else. Because everyone else, you're kind of like, if you watch anime, you go, oh, Hercules is Bato from Ghost in the Shell and a few other animes. Like, and you recognize voices here and there. But then Keith David, you've never heard in an anime really. So you're kind of like, oh, and then he kind of really stands out. So that was fascinating. But it's like back to Tenma, he kind of just weaves in and out randomly. You know?
Yeah.
He kind of just randomly in the 6th episode goes, you know what? I will bring him back.
It's like, you know what? I do think Astro Boy should live.
Yeah, it's like, this is what I mean. It's like, if you care about the pacing, he would have done it the moment he saw him, right? That's the pacing of it, right?
Right.
The pacing would be the moment he heard Adam died, he would have shown up out of nowhere, been like, let me see him. He is dead. But then like the instinct takes over like it does in that scene and he just starts trying to fix him, right? That would have been the way to do it. Not do that 2 episodes later, you know? Like the pacing's all wrong in my opinion, where I don't know. And I get the whole thing with like, you're trying to give each character kind of a moment, which is cool. Like I appreciate that. But because you're not letting them become more than metaphors, I can't really, or at least a stereotype. Like I think the closest to becoming a full character outside of Gesicht is like Epsilon. But Epsilon's more of a stereotype. He's like the stereotypical super kindly, I take care of orphans guy. And he doesn't really have more character beyond that other than pacifist orphan guy. That's really it. And, you know, if you're going to give characters time to shine, let them do things that's more than like just the stereotype. Like Hercules just sits there literally on the island, this Greek island, for like 3 episodes, just brooding. Like Epsilon literally brings the doctor over to him. He's like, "Oh,
what else can he do?
You've been sitting here. You've been sitting here for like a month. Like, you know, like
he can do that. He's a robot."
But you're just like, this is the pacing's so weird. Like, you know, I don't know. And then, do you know if the original story ended in a big Earth explosion threat? Like,
all I know is that Pluto sacrificed himself to save everyone.
Okay,
that's the one detail that I'm certain is still like part of the original.
Okay, because I super hate the ending. I hate everything about the ending.
it's pretty, you know, it's kind of rough.
I know people were saying Bora the whole time. Sure, so you technically have foreshadowed Bora, but the fact that Bora shows up kind of out of nowhere is instantly it's instantly the most powerful entity on the entire planet, but looks like a giant like Michelin Man thing.
Yep.
And
to stay puffed.
And suddenly now can threaten the world. Why didn't he threaten the world before? Why did it have to be on the 4th anniversary? Why not on the 1st anniversary? Why not the 2nd or 3rd? Why now? This doesn't make any. It's like it was
symbolism. He was sad.
It's like he didn't like plan the reasoning out. He just knew where he had to end.
Well, I mean, that does kind of track because, you know, the story is known.
Yeah, and it's just like I guess I'm also like really just off put these days by like, does the world really need to be in danger in order for me to care about the story? Like, I would have been really compelled if it was like, we have just 2 robots left. We have Epsilon and Adam, and we're really just trying to make sure one of them stays alive. And that still would have been a compelling enough story. I didn't need to have the whole world out of nowhere at stake.
Sure.
Even though somehow Gesicht seemed to realize ahead of time by like episode 5 or something that the fate of the world might be at stake when he realized that the Iraqi president Saddam Hussein was in the prison, right? So somehow he realized the fate of the entire world was at stake. And I was like, what? What did you mean? Because I remember there's a scene where he's trying to, he learns, okay, so there's a robot organization that's targeting Gesicht, and then this guy wants to kill him because Gesicht kills brother. It all, coincidentally, all lines up somehow.
Oh, right, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, so the guy is now like, okay, I want to kill you, Gesicht. I fucking hate you. You killed my piece of shit brother, who the story implies is some sort of like robot pedophile or something. Like it's
or
like,
something.
He's like the most horrible person in the world.
Horrible, heinous, like super like robo rapist or something.
Yeah, like implied, like given how even like the anti-robot people thought he was sick, he probably was something with humans too, right? Like there's no other way to quantify that, because robot sympathizers and haters both hated him, his brother. Like his brother sucked. Like they won't explain why. It's just his brother is essentially, well, it's funny because the character's name is Adolf.
Yes.
But his
the brother's name is Adolf.
Yeah.
The surviving brother's name is Adolf.
Yeah, the surviving brother.
Not the evil brother that everyone hated.
Yeah. So
don't get it twisted.
Yeah. So, whatever. But then, whatever. And then, but he just needs revenge on Gesicht. So he keeps trying to kill him, but he can't do it. But now the organization's like, well, we don't want you to kill Gesicht because that's bad PR. So we're going to kill you. But then that leads to like Gesicht finding out that guy used to be a contractor in Persia, and but randomly he's like, hey, just check out these encrypted files I have. They're kind of cool, And then he like looks at them and he goes, oh shit, you have Saddam Hussein in jail. That's fucking crazy. No one knew this. And he's like,
oh man, I kind of forgot about that detail.
Yeah, he's like, it's almost to brag to him. He shows him classified video of Saddam Hussein in jail.
Huh. I honestly forgot how all of that connected together.
I just remembered watching that and being like, it's like 5 coincidences happened in a row. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the next episode after it's all kind of resolved, because Gesicht, protects him under witness protection. The guy's fine. Gesicht regains his memories of the fact that he killed his brother because his brother killed his daughter, the little robot daughter. So Gesicht literally blew him to smithereens, the chunks. And then the Adolf reminded him of that. But Gesicht saved his life and his family's life from the terrorists. So then as Gesicht is being taken away, he asks Adolf, oh my God, I remember everything. The worst part is I'm the one I hate the most because I hate what I've become. I hate that I have learned what hatred is. And he asks Adolf, does it ever go away? And then it's revealed later that Adolf goes, I don't think it ever goes away, but at least what I know is I don't want to hate you anymore. And that's something. And you go, oh, wow, there's an emotional moment happening here. Mm-hmm. And then now Gesicht has to go find Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, like whenever it becomes about like robots be learning about like how human it is to hate something, that's when my mind's like, I'm locked in. I want this show. I want to know more about this show. Yeah, like what is this concept you're getting at? This sounds so interesting to me.
But you're describing hatred almost as if it's like a resource that can be harnessed.
Yeah, but then and then they start talking about it as though like electromagnetic waves can broadcast hatred to other robots.
Which sort of tracks because Uran can literally feel emotions across like the world.
True. So it's like it's an established thing that like emotions can be broadcasted in this universe
somehow. Yeah.
And it affects not just robots but even people, maybe. I don't know. I think
some people are like shocked by when they feel, I think it's like when you feel bad vibes from, I think that's what they're trying to,
right, that spirit pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reiatsu.
Yeah. And it's
I don't know. It's that like, hey, tech magic.
Yeah, which is like, that's okay. It's okay to have fantasy elements in because you can have magical realism. That's a thing.
Yes.
But then you gotta like follow up on it. You gotta like come on, like.
Yeah, and again, it's like, man, I wanted such a complicated examination of humanity and hatred that you're getting at there, and as soon as you have to go tackle that world threat, it's like, man.
Yeah, that is the least interesting part of the show, this fucking Bora thing showing up.
And then again, and then that's when it suddenly hits you. It's like, if I had just remembered that this was the fucking Astro Boy, Greatest Robots arc retold, and it has to end the way it ended, then I can't expect better than this.
But see, part of me is like, why not just deviate?
Sure. And there is that option. But
especially
I feel like if I had just kind of known ahead of time that it was an adaptation that did not, then I feel like I would have been better braced for what I saw.
I guess, but even then, if you were building up to Bora showing up to, okay, because this is all like,
I think I would have been frustrated still, but in a different way.
But even if you were leading up to that, it's all still classic 101 bad storytelling. Like, for example, the very last episode begins with the allegory of these Native Americans essentially were forced out of their lands, and thus out of sorrow they threw themselves into the volcano in Eden. Mm-hmm. And one day it'll erupt and it'll consume the world, right? Mm-hmm. For some reason, that allegory is told. The allegory of what's about to happen is told right in the last episode. Good storytelling would dictate you would say that near the beginning, if not the beginning, right? If it's all supposed to lead up to something, right? Good storytelling would have also said you would have shown Dr. Roosevelt in the first episode. Because if he's actually the mastermind behind everything.
I think they do have like just a couple of seconds of like the face of the bear in the first episode, but it's so out of context.
That means nothing.
Between, it means literally nothing when you see it and you don't remember it.
Yeah. I know they show flashes of the teddy bear in general, but you don't see the teddy bear talking until like the 4th or 5th episode, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, no talking.
And even then it doesn't mean anything because you don't know who the teddy bear is talking to. You're not sure what they're talking about. It almost seems like they're a narrator. And
maybe to me that kind of strikes me as like, you read the manga, right? You know what this is.
Yeah, but it's this,
and that might be like, it might be that those working on it were like, the audience we're making this for should know. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
Like if maybe you were going into it like I am watching this as an adaptation of the sensational manga that everyone's already read. Then maybe that's the better like way to look at it. Perhaps maybe that's the most optimal audience experience you can have.
That's fair.
Because then that would be very much a Brotherhood situation where it's like, this. It's like, like we don't need to dwell on this stuff, but it doesn't dismiss like the clumsiness that you are pointing out, though.
It's fair when you do bring up Brotherhood. There are parts of it where like a character will show up and you'd be like, hey, it's me, the character that was the bumbling idiot from earlier, basically the town. There's a character in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood who was like the original like mayor of a town or assigned mayor of a town. And he ends up being a really big side character. But in the original anime run, because they were following the manga, it shows the whole backstory of that town. Whereas in Brotherhood, he just shows up. He goes, remember me? I was the guy whose town you disrupted with justice.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then like, they catch up to speed super fast and it's clumsy. So you're right. Cause that anime also is definitely expecting you. Yeah, it's that guy. You remember that guy. His story wasn't that interesting. So we're not going to retell it. There's no need to.
Right.
So we just know he's a side character now. But I guess, I don't know. But this is different. Because it's like, you can't expect everyone to have, it just doesn't follow good adaptation logic to me. Like you got to adapt for the audience as if the audience doesn't necessarily, like you can't pretend everyone read the manga and then adapt that way. That's too much. You might expect that Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood because it's usually someone who's already watched Full Metal Alchemist who wants to know. But then I think what turned out was that it became the complete replacement. I don't know if they thought it would completely replace it. I think they thought it would be
at this point, it's a tricky conversation to start recommending Full Metal Alchemist to someone.
To the point where some people actually say, start the regular Full Metal Alchemist here, then stop at this episode, then continue on this episode of Full Metal Alchemist.
Which is still an imperfect solution because there are loose threads that don't get connected correctly, but
yes, and a completely different opening that is referenced later, and
right.
Yeah, so it's but I don't know. It's just I guess that's just what frustrated me, is that like I wanted to like the characters more. And the problem is they can never grow past the metaphor of what they are. The closest were those like Gesicht is obviously laid out.
Yes.
Epsilon has more of a character, but not that much. Adam actually has almost no character at all, other than I'm a boy who's super smart.
He's just like he's depicted as like the world's golden child.
Yes, who's also very adult and like
very precocious, very like mature,
can solve crime scenes like instantly. Like he's also like an amazing detective, incidentally,
who still needs to go to elementary school.
So he's essentially Detective Conan. He just But then like some of the scientists have interesting personalities, like Ochana Mizu's interest. I did like the whole arc where he tried to save the robot dog and fails. I think that's actually a really good encapsulation of what that character is about, is that like he isn't like the ultimate scientist. He just tries his damnedest.
Yes.
And sometimes he works, he gets it across, sometimes he doesn't.
Right. It makes you wonder how Udon exists.
He knows what he's doing. It's just,
But, okay, like without knowing too much about Astro Boy, like the rest of it, it is kind of amazing to see how Udon seems to be in many ways like Adam's equal in terms of like sophistication and emotional intelligence and that sort of thing.
It's possible that he cribbed notes off of Adam.
True. And I don't know if that's like canonically the case. If that's like why she's as advanced as she is.
Yeah, I don't
know. That would help
either.
Explain. But yeah, if it were just like that, then whatever. But yeah, that's Roll, by the way.
Yeah.
for anyone tracking, that's Roll.
It's Adam and Uran and Rock and Roll.
Yes.
There we go. And the original, if you look at the original Astro Boy enemies, they do kind of look like Robot Masters. They all have googly eyes.
They very much look like Robot Masters. Like Mont Blanc is like Bomb Man.
Yeah.
And and from there on,
I mean, again, I get what you were talking about of how like, okay, like the entire thing where they're investigating Sahad, and you're like, okay, interesting. So this guy has been forced into Pluto's body. Interesting. Oh, the one of the most interesting parts in the fight with Epsilon, the second fight, he asks Epsilon, please just kill me. Why won't you kill me? Right. And that's fascinating too, where it's like, okay, like this is such a good moment. And then it's
like
Bora
they're trying to like find all the places where you can sneak in a sophisticated emotional like bit.
Yeah.
They'll just sprinkle those into the original story's like structure.
Yeah.
And see where they can just, shove them into crevices.
And I don't mind the point of Gesicht dying. Like, I think that's actually an interesting twist. Like the main character that you are following, your anchor character ends up dying 2/3 of the way through the story. And I'm like, that's an interesting twist. The problem is it then gets converted over to Adam, who is just has not been built up to follow him. It's
right. It would have been like interesting and compelling for Adam to spend more time dwelling on the implications of what Gesicht had discovered about his child.
Yeah, because Gesicht instantly understood everything. Adam instantly understood everything and processed everything and was able to, not instantly, it took him like a few hours, and then after he woke up, and then he processed everything, which also isn't quite explained about, I guess. So why does Adam being injected with Gesicht's hatred? Is it because Gesicht learned to kind of divert his hatred after getting that speech from Adolf? Is that what's going on? I guess that could be what's going on.
Maybe.
Yeah, because
I don't remember Astro. Did he re-download Gesicht's memories after Gesicht was dead?
So what happened is, the order of events is Adam dies, or in quotes, is dead.
Yes.
Gesicht learns the truth of why his memories, him and his wife's memories for the past 3 years were wiped, because their daughter was killed, and someone, I guess it turns out it's the company that owns him, essentially, that decided to wipe it.
Or like the German government, perhaps.
Yeah, it's unclear where the government ends and the corporation begins, but it's clearly some sort of intermingled thing. And they make him forget the murder and the fact that he also committed a murder. But he remembers, which brings all of his hatred back. And then he asks Adolf, what do I do with this? Like, how do I redirect this? And Adolf goes, I don't know where it goes. All I know is I've learned to not want to hate you anymore, which is, I still think, is a really interesting and powerful moment. And then Gesickt dies after learning other things. Then Tenma gets Gesickt's memory chip from Helena, his wife. Tenma decides to put that into Adam to start him up, because it turns out Adam's the same way as the weird 9.9 billion AI robot. He needs to be awakened.
Because they said so.
I just still don't get, like, why did this?
Yeah. It's one of those things.
So he has to be awakened with hate. So he knows Gesickt has hate in it. So he uses Gesickt's hate to wake him up.
And then he has to kind of recover from the hate vaccine.
Right, but he doesn't fully recover, because he tells Ochanomizu, hey, I'm feeling okay now. But there's like a scene where he realizes Dr. Roosevelt is like remotely looking in on him. And he goes, I wouldn't mess with me if I were you, or something like that. And you're like, oh, okay, interesting. And then when he fights Pluto, he goes, I'm going to destroy you. I hate you. Blah, blah, blah. And like, he fights that way. And it's like,
right.
Why is this different?
Yeah, I don't know. Because it's like it's supposed to be a moment where he realizes, like, I don't want to, like, I am about to perpetuate the cycle of violence by destroying Pluto. I can't do this. I have to divert myself.
Yes.
And not kill him.
What is it? Was there a specific thing? Is it because he had the memory? It seemed like it implies he has the memories of all the robots who died.
Maybe
somehow, like, because he kept there's multiple times in the last episode where he repeats their names in order, and initially it's like to kind of say their names in the name of vengeance, because he yells out, all Mont Blanc wanted to do was save the forest and be a peaceful guy, and all Brando wanted to do was wrestle for his family, and all Hercules wanted to do was wrestle in general. And
yeah, I don't know if Adam necessarily had any physical memories or data from the others in him aside from Gesikt's.
I think you could say, at least for almost all the others, that when they like exploded, they were broadcasting or something, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So their memories went into either Adam or Gesickt, but when he gets Gesikt's, then he would get that too. Except Mont Blanc.
Yeah.
Mont Blanc never transmitted anything. Mont Blanc is just the first casualty that you see dramatically, and it doesn't.
I feel like the longer we talk like this, though, the more of a trap it is, because the show was not about this.
I know,
at all.
but you turned hatred into essentially like a resource. You have to like quantify it to some degree.
No, they don't. It's Japan. Stories.
I forget who the middle robot was. Adam was the middle robot. So it's Adam. So because it's Mont Blanc, it's Brando, it's Hercules, it's Adam, it's Gesickt, it's Epsilon. Oh, there's one more. I forget. Who's the last one? There's a middle robot. I forget. Who are the 7 great robots?
Adam, Gesickt, Brando, Hercules.
Oh, it was North number 2, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, he was so separated that you just forgot.
Yeah.
Also, North number 2, also
with nobody.
Also one where nobody would have caught a transmission of him or whatever,
I guess so.
So that one was like, for that he said, all North number 2 wanted to do was stop fighting forever, make music, and that's why he's fighting. But then at the end he goes, oh, but these guys wouldn't want me to keep fighting. I'll stop. And then he lays with Pluto overnight into the night.
I don't know.
Do you remember that part?
It's dark. No,
they stop fighting and they're just lying on the floor together next to each other. Like, man, you see that shooting star? Shooting stars, you can make a wish. What wish did you make? And no, Pluto goes in this like monster voice, "What wish did you make, Adam?" You're like, what is going on?
Wait, I saw that in the English cast list. That was Fred Tatasciore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Classic, of course.
They got your, generic Hulk voice man.
Generic monster man voice.
To be Pluto.
Yeah. But this is the funny thing where this is like, okay, they stop fighting.
Yeah, like I think it is like, it's supposed to be a big moment, but it does read fairly silly when Pluto like starts like crying and bawling his eyes out.
No, okay, so that I didn't find that weird. I was like, okay, it's like it happens a lot in anime. People just crying. So it's like
right, and it is supposed to be like kind of this is the breakout of like Sahad's like true personality on him.
Yes. He just doesn't want to do this anymore. It's
kind of funny to see the big monster crying, though.
Yeah, the Abula built tear ducts into the robot.
Yes. So
which, whatever. But the part
I've seen Steven Universe. I've been there.
And also the part that got me is when they decided to then just lay down on the floor together until night fell. And I'm like, okay, there's a robot that's the size of a mountain trying to destroy the world. Maybe rest later.
Okay.
Also, this fucking weather robot shows up out of nowhere because Epsilon contacted it once, and suddenly it's the most important exposition dump robot in the world. This one weather robot knows.
Oh, I forgot.
Everything.
What did the weather robot look like?
It's got like this pointy face, and then Epsilon calls him and goes, "Yep, I'm the best weather robot in the world. What do you want to know about, Epsilon?" And Epsilon goes, "Well, have you noticed these weather patterns in Persia before?"
And he's like, "Yeah, I know where all of them are."
Well, he did actually. Like he found it, and he was like, "Okay, let me take a look." Well, it looks like under the dust was like this really big monster that somehow no one ever noticed.
Should have asked me earlier.
And I'm like, I fucking hate this Bora thing. Like, why not?
You know what? I'd say, I guess maybe we haven't really brought this up like as a central topic, but the whole like Bora thing, and like this is a new concept in the Pluto version of the story, where they set up this gigantic big like the fact-finding mission, and the fact that they couldn't find anything, and it was a false invasion. All that stuff that is clearly a parallel to the Iraq War,
right?
Like that wasn't in the original version of the story.
But was Bora in the original?
Bora the robot? I don't remember if the robot was originally part of the story, but like but the fact that they turned it in like the fact finding mission was named Bora, and like all of that stuff, the integration of all that was new.
But why was
the motivations of Abula and all that stuff were all new? Why
would the fact-finding mission be named the Bora fact-finding mission when they didn't know Bora existed yet? Unless afterward, the king of Persia decided to name his killer robot after the fact-finding mission.
Maybe it's just like, eye for an eye sort of a thing.
Then what the hell did Bora mean to begin with?
Well, I don't know, but I do bring this up right now because I think I saw like I was trying to like recap myself and try to like fresh what happened. Mm-hmm. And in one of the recaps I saw, they happened to say, and I don't know if this is like they pointed out that when Brow like takes down Roosevelt, that's like the point at which all of the evils of like the kingdom of Thracia have been like negated. Just like that is the point at which all of like the things that led to like this conflict, like the sources of it are like the key sources of it are gone.
That fucking sucks. I fucking hate that.
But that feels like that might be like the end point that Urasawa was okay with reaching.
I fucking hate that. I hate the idea that all the evil was just this one stupid robot, and it wasn't a bunch of humans making stupid decisions like it seemed like at the beginning of the show, where it was like, it's because humanity is willing to commit evil, not because it was all controlled by one fucking teddy teddy bear robot.
Well, I don't think the implication is to say that it was all a robot's fault, but just that when the robot is taken down, there are no longer any remnants of what caused the original problem.
Except the president's there and the entire government of Thracia is there. It's not like they wouldn't do these things without the fucking teddy bear telling them to.
You know what? You're right. The president is there and he's the one who ordered it. So maybe it's just the recapper that's completely off base. But that might just be a testament to what this show is doing to us all, because there are so many pieces to point to at any given point in the conversation that won't necessarily corroborate what you're getting at when you get to the next section of the conversation.
Yeah, because it's also like, okay, again, this is the conflict between the realism and the metaphor.
Exactly.
Yes. If you want to do the metaphor, you can have a big good versus evil battle. Keep it nice and simple. There's the Sith and the Jedi, and they're gonna fight. And fuck you, fuck the Emperor. We're gonna fucking kill him once the Emperor is dead. Force is balanced, right? Mm-hmm. But then you can't then have the gritty realism of, man, war really fucks people up and makes people hate shit, man. You know, and especially Adam at the end then says this will just happen again if we don't get rid of hatred and stop the cycle of hatred. Will the cycle ever end, Dr. Uchanamizu? I don't know, Adam, but we'll work towards it every day, right? And you're like, okay, so you can't say that's the metaphor of the show, then also say, by the way, the United States of Thracia, all of the evil's gone now, it's fine. It doesn't work.
Or it might have, alternatively, it may be a passing of the torch. But
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very messy show to talk about. That, you know, you got to cling to the themes that resonate with you, and be willing to discard everything else you're thinking about it.
Again, I think the thing I told you before we even started, I think last night or maybe early this morning when I was just talking to you, I was like, this show is less than the sum of its parts. There's really good parts where you're like, damn, that's a really good scene. I really like that
yeah,
scene.
You know what? Since I didn't get a chance to mention it during our first recording, and I hadn't mentioned it yet this time, I'll just bring it up here, because episode 2 had the one moment that kind of sold me on the show, which had a lot to do with like the mystery and humanity elements of it, which was when Adam takes Gesik's memory chip to, like, you know, tell me what's going on. And he takes it in and says, you know what? I need to go to the bathroom. And it's like, oh, you need to go to the bathroom too? That's crazy. It's like, yeah, I'm really human, like, haha. And then he goes into the bathroom and then he just like breaks down crying.
Yeah.
Because of what he was able to like see on the chip.
Yeah.
And you don't know what it is yet. And it's really like, wow, what the fuck is that? Like, yeah, it's really like compelling stuff.
And in retrospect, you realize it's him realizing his child was killed.
Yes.
And that he's been forced to forget it. And that's why he goes, I see it all, you know, I remember it all. And I think even without knowing that, though, that scene is it's probably the best character moment Adam has. Yes. Where you're kind of like, wow, he's very emotionally mature in the sense that he knows exactly what's going on. He knows how to politely prevent it from affecting Gesik again, because he knows.
Yes.
And he puts on a brave face when he says goodbye to Gesik, you know, and that's all a bunch of, and you know, it's a front, because when he goes into detective mode, he suddenly switches into like the mind of an adult, and he's kind of just like doing a detective work. So yeah, I mean, that's probably the best Adam moment. And after that,
like episode 2 got me on board with like liking Adam, but then it didn't go anywhere else. And that was like kind of a bummer for me, because it's like, shit.
Yeah.
Like,
and
I wanted the Gesik and Adam show. Yeah. That's what I wanted after episode 2.
I mean, it could have been, you had a setup for like a type of buddy cop setup where, you know, you have the experience. I mean, it doesn't have to be comedy antagonistic buddy cops. It could just be two different types of, you know, investigators.
I guess I definitely would have settled for just the Gesik show.
Yes.
And not the Gesik then Adam show, which is what we got.
And again, I think it could have worked.
Yeah, it could have been pulled off better than what they did. But
I think, it's
back
hampered.
to go back to this original track, please.
Yeah.
Stay on the rails.
Yeah, it's hampered by the fact that it had to end with Bora, which was honestly so boring. Like, because the only thing that could have actually been an exciting ending is if Bora succeeded, right? Because once you know a world-ending threat is happening, well, they're gonna stop it. Like, what else could happen? There's no there's no emotional stakes beyond it, because I don't really care about Adam that closely as a character, and Pluto I don't really know other than as Sahad. But
okay, I just went to go look and confirm that Bora was originally part of of the original story.
So it's because they had to slavishly make sure Bora's in there and make sure it followed the last few story beats of Bora potentially destroying the world, etc.
And that actually lends itself to your earlier theory about kind of writing kind of fast and loose, because you would know, as someone who read the original arc or saw the original adaptations, Bora is a big deal. Bora is the end point. That's the end game. And you know that Bora must mean something. What does it mean in this show? I don't know yet, but they're going to keep saying it and string you along.
Yeah. And
I think that kind of tracks.
Yeah. I just don't care. And then,
and if you realize that that's what they've been doing, then it makes you stop caring.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And like, it makes you forget the theme of the show until Adam reminds you at the end, where he's like, by the way, this all happened because there was a cycle of hatred. And you're like, oh, right. Yeah. That's why a big monster was trying to cause a huge volcano.
Yeah.
Because, like, why would it start off with murders, right? Why not just go straight to the world-ending cataclysm?
Wait a minute.
Like if Bora / Abula's plan from the beginning was to end
you mean like the villain's motivations?
Yeah,
that's what you're asking about.
Yeah, was to end the world. Even Dr. Roosevelt. Dr. Roosevelt's ambition is to end the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bora's there the whole time, just waiting, right? All Abula needed is Tenma to put him in, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all he needed. Why do this whole rigmarole where you're killing the 7 greatest robots in the world?
I'm not sure. I guess maybe they were afraid that if they were all around, they could band together and defeat Bora.
I guess, but that's never
explicitly laid out. So you have to make some leaps to.
Also, like Brando and Hercules, they can't do shit. Those guys.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting when it's like, these are the 6 strongest, most greatest technologically advanced robots there are, and you're like, but we have robots passing for literal people. Like, in several places.
Also, if you mean in terms of combat capability, like, just to be frank, from what we saw, Mont Blanc does nothing. He's just a big dude. North Number 2 is a bunch of saws and lasers.
Yeah, he's the equivalent of several guns and things on a tank.
Yeah, he's the equivalent of like a war machine.
And granted, he can fly too. So yeah, he's like a fighter jet.
Sure, they all fly though. They all fly. So the flying doesn't mean much to me. Like Brando and Hercules are essentially the same big fight robot. Then you have Adam, who's essentially a nuclear weapon, and you have Epsilon, who's essentially a nuclear weapon, and you have Gesicht, who can basically fire a nuclear weapon. So those 3 kind of make the others don't matter. Like Mont Blanc, Hercules, Brando don't really matter, and then North Number 2 don't really matter. Also, they brought up the whole point right at the end of the proton bomb. I think that's what it was called.
I barely remember this.
It's like Adam draws feverishly on a wall.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
The formula for the anti-proton bomb or something like that, or the proton bomb or something like that. Okay, so we had a metaphor this entire time that robots are the weapons of mass destruction. But then at the very end, you have an actual literal weapon of mass destruction that's so powerful it could destroy the world. Why are these robots so important anymore then?
That is a good point.
Why bring up the bomb?
I'm trying so hard to remember, like, if that amounted to anything at all. Like,
so that bomb was supposed to be the thing that was supposed to trigger the volcanic explosion that will end the world. Bora had one in him.
Oh, okay, yeah, right, okay, got it.
But you didn't need to do that. You could have come up with any sort of BS to say Bora will cause a volcanic explosion, right? Why bring up the idea of an actual nuclear weapon of mass destruction when your entire metaphor the whole time was that it's the robots? The robots are the metaphors for.
And not just that, but at the end, it's like in order to pay you guys back for attacking us for not having weapons of mass destruction, I'm going to make the biggest weapon of mass destruction and prove you right at the end, though.
To be fair, I think it's because it was supposed to be a terraforming robot, right? Like they built 2 terraforming robots. They had Pluto. Although, why would it have been named Pluto, the god of death, when it was supposed to be a terraforming robot? I don't know. Maybe he named it again. Maybe he renamed it. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe he was like, you know what? A flower maker doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah, I'm gonna give him evil eyes now.
Yeah, I'm gonna repaint him. He used to be green.
Yeah.
He looked really cool before.
He looked so happy before, but now.
Yeah.
And I think there was also a Bora. I think Bora was also supposed to be a terraform. The fact that there's 2 made it confusing, and the fact, and I get,
there's a lot of like end game stuff that got really confusing.
Yeah, and it's like Sahad is Pluto, who is the son of Abula, who is Goji, the famous scientist who created the weapon of mass destruction robot.
I think the way they framed it is that Goji was kind of like Tyler Durden for Robo Abula.
Yes, but he is also Robo Abula, which separate from real Abula, who died already.
Yeah.
And Robo Abula is also Bora. Also, there is Saddam Hussein
in there somewhere.
Yeah, who is like kind of asking them to do this for him.
Right. He's just like the guy who said like, "Hey, can you do this?" And they kind of went off on their own.
Yeah.
We figured it out. I'm not sure there's a whole lot left to like go over here without just, just getting out of comb.
Like, did you need to have many layers of weird? That also strikes me as, okay, I created Goji. How do I wrap it up at the end? Abula was also Goji. Let's wrap that up. Okay. that's what it strikes me as, like
it does really feel that way now that like we're examining it more closely in this way, in this manner. I am starting to agree with you more and more that this feels like, improv writing,
which isn't always bad again.
Yeah. And a lot of things are in fact written in exactly that manner.
I mean, Breaking Bad was the last season of Breaking Bad. They didn't know how they would reach the ending. They just knew there was an ending they wanted to reach. They wrote the ending first. And they were like, okay, well, let's see how we get there, And they came up with the whole great season. It's possible. But you kind of have to plan it too, I guess. And it seems like he was doing it chapter by chapter.
Right. And at this point, this is more of a critique of the manga than it is the show.
Yeah, but it follows the manga so closely that...
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, since this is a recap, would you recommend it to someone, Dan?
I don't think I can overall.
Yeah.
I think I could extract some scenes and clips to show people. It's like, these are the bits you should watch. But I feel like it's a tall ask to take a random person and say, this show's good, watch it. It definitely requires so much additional context and knowledge of Astro Boy and its characters and history to even really begin having a decent conversation about what you're watching.
Yeah. And if you don't,
you're just confused and angry. And I think that's what that's what was happening to Sarah when she was watching it the first time.
And she was like, it just manifested as, you know what? Fuck these robots. Fuck them all.
Well, honestly, I honestly still think that she got like super triggered by North number 2 touching the piano.
Oh no, she did. That's absolutely what happened. Yeah. She just
like it was just that thing. It was set her off. It's like, no, fuck robots forever.
She's like, stop touching the piano. She was saying that as we were watching. She was like, he won't listen to him.
He's a robot. He's supposed to listen.
No, but also he's like, even if he was a human, that's just really, really rude. I don't like this type of person who just refuses to honor your wishes.
That's true. It's true.
See, I would recommend it only to people who watch a lot of anime.
Yeah. Okay, then I can join you on that caveat. If you watch a lot of anime, and especially if you're actually already a fan of Astro Boy, this might just be up your alley.
Yeah, I think
it is like the case. It is true that we are not originally Astro Boy fans, so there's a lot of that original context and maybe even love that isn't there to start with, and so. I
think there's also this thing about the genre of anime where, because it's more than just a medium or format, it's almost its own idiom, right? Where if you're an anime enjoyer, you tend to be okay with certain types of tropes or with certain aspects of weaker storytelling.
I think I remember seeing a tweet about this once. It's like recommending anime to people is tricky because you need to know what level of anime bullshit they're okay with.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's like not just like this the stereotypical stuff of like, yes, there's cheesecake, there's stupid humor like this. There's a lot of isekai, etc. It's not just that. It's also a certain type of thing where, like, for example, I enjoy Frieren. I think Frieren is really good, but I think Frieren also very slightly is less than the sum of its parts. It's very enjoyable. There's a lot to enjoy about it, but it's also the type of that type of anime where it's kind of like if you watch it like I did, like all at once, kind of all in a few sittings, you can kind of just see where it's kind of like, okay, so the way everything is resolved is through Frieren knew the whole time from a flashback. She learned this 100 years ago, how to solve this. She learned how to solve this 100 years ago, etc. Which is like fine, but it's not like the funnest storytelling. But you can let it go because Frieren is almost not about that. Frieren is about the fact that you're trying to understand the pacing of living as this elf that lives so long that she cannot relate to the lifespan or like the urgency like that humans have.
Yeah.
Where humans are like, well, we got to do this quest. I mean, we only got a year left. And she's like, I just want to spend this year just like looking at these leaves in this forest, and studying them. That's kind of what I want to do. And she will, and if left alone, she will literally do that. She will literally spend years in a forest just researching plants. So it's more about like embodying that feeling, and the story is along for the ride, really. And I think that's sort of something you have to just kind of expect from some types of anime where you're like, it's really in love with its concept. And
it's definitely more common for Japanese styles of storytelling to rely on broad concepts and metaphors to communicate a story without and oftentimes details and like logistics kind of fall by the wayside. I feel like that is fairly common in Japanese stories.
Yeah, there's very few animes that grow beyond the core gimmick or theme or the core hook. With Frieren, it's that, hey, this is elf that lives hundreds of years. Her time scale is weird. See how she interacts. With Adam, it's sort of like, let's see how robots deal with hatred, and what does that mean? Sort of, because you don't even get to the core of what that means.
I mean, I would have loved if it was only about that.
Yeah, but it's not. But also, let's do the story of this famous Adam story that existed previously. It's kind of why I really love Spy Family, because Spy Family does have the core mechanic of, look at this wacky setup where these characters are all these one is a spy, one's an ESP girl, and one is an assassin, and the dog can tell the future. What a wacky setup. But it uses that to then like start character developing and to tell a story, and using the limitations of how crazy constricted that can be to tell its story. Because it's like, okay, how do you tell a story where the girl knows everything but the other two don't, but the dog can tell the future, and she's the only one who knows the dog can tell the future because she could read the dog's mind. So now how do we make a story out of this? And now we make a story, and it becomes more than the setup, And I think like the problem with with Pluto is it's not more than the setup, really. And sometimes that's what animes do, though, and you have to be okay with that.
I think it was just uniquely frustrating in a way because it had those good bits that made you believe it could go somewhere else.
Yes,
then it doesn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the classic, squandered potential feels worse than something, that's just straight bad.
Well, like one direct example, the example thing I can think of is, okay, so everyone knows Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop is fantastic anime. It has a setup, space bounty hunters, right? But then it becomes more than that. You start exploring characters. It becomes character study episodes, right? You start learning more about Spike and Jet and Faye and Ed and Ein, and you start learning how they interact and why it's fun and why they have a family dynamic until it's destroyed, right? Like that's kind of the general thing of Cowboy Bebop. Shinichiro Watanabe's follow-up, Samurai Champloo, similar setup, you have super stoic samurai, you have like kind of crazy Ronin with quirky girl. Need to find
like
a
ragtag
samurai.
misfit team.
Yes, but it never changes. That's the entire show. They don't develop anything beyond that. And that's why that show's way less interesting than Cowboy Bebop. The Samurai Champloo Samurai Champloo is so worried about making sure that the two main characters, Mugen and Jin, are mirror copies of each other that they forget to give him any character beyond that. They just kind of go, he's crazy, he's stoic, he's a Ronin, he's a former samurai, you know, he fights like a b-boy guy, he fights like a traditional samurai. He's got slave tattoos or prison tattoos. He's got prayer beads instead, you know, like there's this like real idea that that's all the character you need. And the show becomes nothing beyond that.
And Champloo very much was, its great strength was its style.
It was only style. That's the thing. It didn't have pretty much anything beyond that. Whereas Bebop started off with that setup and had a bunch of, it's extremely stylish, beautiful show. Wonderful to look at, great music, great sense of pacing. But what really keeps you watching is the fact that you start to care about these characters a lot, you know, and that's not as common in anime. And you kind of sometimes have to just know that comes with the territory of anime sometimes.
Yes.
Like, I think one reason why Full Metal Alchemist ended up being such a hit is because it was so character driven. And people were really enamored by that. And they were like, wow, like you're stopping down a story just to have characters like really talk to each other, etc., and understand what their motivations are, etc. And it becomes more than just a show about people can make alchemy by drawing circles, you know. It never leaves the logistics of that. It keeps the world building of that intact, and the ending relies on that world building, which is why it's satisfying. But it's all ultimately driven by character, you know.
Yeah, and it was definitely they emphasized character well.
Yeah,
and they didn't have a really old story to conform to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring it back to Pluto.
Yeah. We harped on that long enough, I guess, or I have. I'm just frustrated. That's all.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Because I think your
frustration's fresher, so you want to keep talking about it.
Yeah, and you and I can both see how it could have been really, really satisfying. You know, like it's all in there.
I see all the pieces that are such a great like launching point for like I want to see how cool this can get.
Yes.
Not that I have the, you know, I know that there's a good story in there somewhere. Yes. It's just that, you know, it's definitely not in the show that we saw. Not the version that I wanted.
Like, remember the part where Pluto took over like a construction worker's like day body? Remember? And Uran met him in the caves or in the tunnels and got to know. That's how you got to know Pluto as a character, you know?
Yes.
And you're like, this is really interesting. Where are we going with this? Is Adam going to meet Pluto? No, they're just going to fight or have a confrontation and he's going to leave. Damn it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just squeezed in the moments, you know, in between the big pieces that need to happen.
Yeah. And come on.
Yeah. Yeah. But
anyway,
this might just be our issue because we didn't know what we were getting into. We didn't know this was an Astro Boy story.
I mean, we knew it was we knew it was about Astro Boy.
Yeah, but I guess we went in with our hopes too high about what it could become.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize it was a direct adaptation of a very specific, famous Astro Boy storyline. And even if I guess
that's kind of interesting. That's an interesting about it. It isn't just this is Astro Boy fanfic. This is a retelling of a story that already exists.
Yeah, it's like the Desperado to El Mariachi, where it's the exact same story. You just have decide to have a different type of budget and a different type of attitude towards it. But otherwise, it's kind of the same. You throw in your own themes, but it has to end the same way, though.
Yes.
All right. I got that out of my system.
Yeah, both of us did. I mean, I have finally gotten the opportunity to say what I've wanted to say about Pluto in this episode, so it's good. glad to have that off my chest.
I guess at least though, because I don't want to completely shit on it. I did keep wanting to watch it. So, there was something about it that kept me going the whole time.
Yeah, and I'll say that about my watch too. But I think it's also a contributing factor to the frustration because you keep watching because you're hoping that more of what you want will appear.
Yes.
And at the end, it doesn't.
Yes.
So you just got to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Because back to, not shitting on it, we want to keep watching and find those bits that are good because they are sprinkled in there. They're good bits.
Yeah. And you are also logistically, from like a technical storytelling perspective, you're also watching to see, hey, what is the mystery? Who is the killer? What is happening?
Yeah, and there is there is an ongoing like discovery of developments that kind of like keep you occupied or like, hold your attention. Maybe when you look at it all laid out in retrospect, it might not make a whole lot of sense, but it will keep you occupied.
And I think, you hope for more because as soon as you see Sahad and Gesek investigating Sahad, you go, oh, that's Pluto, obviously. Is there more than that? No. I guess technically there's more. His dad is also a huge robot named Bora.
Yeah, and I guess there is a fair amount of mystery surrounding Abla and like what the nature of him, why he keeps registering as a robot on scanners,
right,
and why he keeps on saying that story.
Yeah, because the easiest explanation is
mostly robotic now.
He's just a robot. You're a robot.
So it's like, I mean, there's a bit of like, is he lying? Is he not? Sort of like uncertainty there that you can hold on to as you go.
Right.
But I mean, those listening to this are likely people who have seen the show, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So hopefully nothing we're talking about here will actually be like the recommendation we're giving here. Like there were good pieces in there. Just hard to recommend to someone who doesn't know exactly what anime is like.
And if you enjoyed it, I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
And there are a lot of people who did.
Yeah.
To be fair, like the whole reason why I wanted to watch this show in particular is because it was so well regarded or like highly like critically reviewed.
It's very well regarded, and it's a lot of people consider it the best anime on Netflix right now, which is really interesting to me.
Yeah, and so like all of that together made me so like interested in this show, and it also kept me wanting to like mulling the show over. It's like, am I missing something? Like, is my frustration with the show like not the point?
And I think it ultimately isn't. The show kind of wants to stray away from that. Like it wants to go, don't worry about the fact that it's not all logical because it's really metaphorical. Like it's
right, and so. I guess that's the bottom line here.
Yeah. Also, to be frank, the Netflix bar for quality, like Netflix exclusive anime, isn't that high. I mean, like people fucking love Castlevania, and
oh boy,
I think Castlevania is just awful. It's so boring.
Okay, granted, I was not watching past the second.
I watched
season,
the whole thing.
And okay, you've seen it all, like all that exists.
It's so boring.
All right. Then I'm probably willing to take your word for it because I've gotten recommendations from others like, oh, pick it back up, it gets better, it's good, and I was like, really?
The only thing that gets better is that the fight scenes get really, really, really energetic versus how boring they were before.
Okay, this is important. How much more Castlevania music is used?
The last season uses some, but only for the biggest fight scenes, and I think I don't. My memory is that that's what happened, but I could be confabulating. But my memory is there are some really big final fight scenes,
because that was very easily the great sin of the first two seasons that I saw.
Which I am not.
They used real ass Castlevania music one time.
That's the thing. The show. This is a really big tangent. Just going to really quickly go through this. The showrunners admitted right away they had the rights to the music the whole time. They just chose not to use them.
Well, fuck off.
And I'm like, that's one of the most iconic parts of the fucking series.
Yeah, see, like when I hear things like that, it gives me so little faith in everything else. Like, if you can't get that part right about Castle Goddamn Vania, then we're done here.
And I think one of the worst parts of it is that it has way too happy an ending. Everything ends absolutely perfectly, even for Dracula. So
you know what? Sometimes I'm cool with stupid ass happy endings like that.
It's like absurdly happy. Like every single potential nice happy thing that could have happened happens. Like it's.
Hey, you know what? I'm okay with endings like that lately. I'm all right with that.
You know,
an ending like that on its own is not an offense to me.
Yeah, I think it is just because you see what they have to go up against, and you're like, really? That's what happened?
Like I say bring back the ending of a movie that is just a crowd of people partying with the characters.
Bring back
not the animated CG dance party. That's different.
Yeah.
It has to be like Ghostbusters.
Bring back the Grease ending where everyone's just happy and a car flies off into the sunset. And you're like, hell yeah.
Does it literally fly into the sky?
It literally flies off. Yeah.
Oh shit, that's
which
cool.
Is why
I've never seen Grease.
Which is why there's always the stupid film theory of it turns out they were dead the whole time and their ghosts are going off into heaven. And you're like, idiot, then why would there have been a whole down to earth thing where he's talking about I'm gonna study hard in college?
Any indication that something is dead. Anything remotely suggesting that something is dead or not real.
It's a musical.
Or a dream.
They're singing, so anything can happen.
Oh, really? It really goes there? That's what it says?
No. What I'm saying is like they didn't die. Like it's a musical.
I thought you were saying that in the video that you saw. It was saying like they break into song randomly. How realistic is that? They can't possibly be alive.
It's not even like a specific video. It's like an ongoing, long-lasting theory that multiple people have said. Where it's like, well, they flew off because they're dead. You know, he died in the car race. And I'm like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. There's many scenes afterward. And it's a musical.
That's when he was a shambling corpse.
It's a musical. They break out into song and dance. Who is to say the car can't do a similar thing?
You just don't get it, Marvin.
All right. Well, we've rambled, or I have rambled on enough. Honestly, it's been the Marvin gets to have a therapeutic rambling about Pluto episode.
That's fine, because I got my ramblings in too.
It just really affected me. That's all, which I guess is a positive.
Yeah, like I
thought about this.
I had enough time to digest this and condense this down into like a few key like core evaluations in my mind. And so like I had focused on it for a little too long, and I got a little too condensed.
Well,
but you're still raw.
Well,
you're rawer than I,
and you're straight into the point. Whereas I'm just like, why?
No, but I mean, a lot of things that you bring up were things that I hadn't really considered or thought about myself. So
just imagine Adam in a circus right now.
He'd be so good at it.
He can fly.
Everyone would come to see him.
What trick would he perform?
Vaporize this elephant. Come on, Edison commands you.
Kill half the audience.
I mean, it'd be impressive.
Yeah, they all start just applauding. Oh, they were just robots. It's fine. Epsilon just for some reason, Epsilon melting robots is nuking a city. Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It's odd.
All right, that's fine.
Actually, wait, hold on a second. I just realized something. Abula was broken up about the death of his family, yeah?
Yeah.
And the invasion, or like the 39th Central Asian War, was all about destroying robots, was it not?
Yeah.
But his human family died?
Yeah, so that's part of the thing, is that because it's like the Iraq War.
Was it okay, so was it the story that it was an unfortunate human casualty?
Lots of casualties, because the real story is they wanted to invade. That's really their true story.
Well, okay, I'm talking about like specifically in the context of what the show said.
Yeah, that's what the show said. Yeah, the show.
Okay, just making sure that it was how it was depicted in the show.
It's like a bombing randomly happened to be near his family's house.
Okay, I was just like trying to confirm or verify whether or not the 39th Asian War was also the thing that killed his family when it was that robo conflict that everyone else was broken up about.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that was all caused by a teddy bear. which is very narratively satisfying to know it's all caused by one evil teddy bear robot instead of,
one ruxpin.
Just the fact that, the American military complex is fucking horseshit.
Well, I mean, this is one Japanese guy's. He filtered all this through Astro Boy. Like we have to remember this is how we were.
Dr. Roosevelt's real name is Northrop Grumman, and
yeah.
And
it's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting angle to take. Honestly,
yeah. Well, that was Would You. Stay tuned. Next time, like we said, we're going to watch Interview with the Vampire, which AMC.
I still haven't seen the first episode yet.
It's the AMC TV version, which, I mean, I already told you this, Dan, but Sarah and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
I remember you saying that you did.
But part of me wondered, because I haven't rewatched the pilot, and part of me wonders, in retrospect, if it's because of like a thing I was enamored with. Now that I know it's there and I rewatch it, will I have the same effect on me? I don't know. We'll see. We'll rewatch it and see.
I guess I'll need to talk to you later to find out what you mean by that.
Yeah, when we record our next episode of Would You. Stay tuned. Goodbye, everybody.
Stay tuned, everyone, to us.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.